Today's broadcast is brought to you by ClassicBaseballBroadcasts.com, your one-stop destination for thousands of authentic, vintage radio game broadcasts, interviews and highlights. Red Barber, Mel Allen, Vin Scully, Ernie Harwell, Kurt Godey are just a few of the Ford Frick Award-winning voices. There are hundreds more that will bring back childhood memories from back in the day when the game was always on. From the crack of the bat to the roar of the crowd, relive the moments that made Baseball America's favorite pastime. Get started for free and step back in time listening to baseball's greatest moments.
C-O-L-G-A-T-E, Colgate presents Bill Stern.
With the Colgate Shave Cream Sports Newsreel.
Bill Stern, the Colgate Shave Cream Man, is on the air. Bill Stern, the Colgate Shave Cream Man, with stories rare. Take his advice and you'll look keen. You'll get a shave that's smooth and clean. You'll be a Colgate brushless fan.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Bill Stern bringing you the 345th edition of the Colgate Shave Cream Sports Newsreel, featuring strange and fantastic stories, some that are legends, others mere hearsay, but all so interesting we'd like to pass them along to you. Our special guest tonight in person is the man who's made a lobby out of his hobbies, the famous radio star Dave Elman. But first, let's begin with Reel 1, Profile of a Dead Man. They say that dead men tell no tales. Well, I know a dead man who told a strange tale, a story I'd like to tell you. For this is the story of a dead man who hit a home run. Our story begins about 5 years ago when Bruce Campbell was a famous big league baseball player playing with the Cleveland Indians. That is, Bruce Campbell was playing with the Cleveland Indians until one day he became seriously ill. They took Bruce Campbell to a hospital where steadily he became worse until finally he died. No sooner was Bruce Campbell dead than a death certificate was made out. And the nurse who had been taking care of him called the coroner and said,
"I'd like to report the death of a patient. His name was Bruce Campbell. He died a few minutes ago."
They were just about to take Bruce Campbell's dead body away when suddenly someone noticed that the dead man had begun to breathe again. Not only did Bruce Campbell begin to breathe again, but in 3 weeks, he was well enough to rejoin his team, the Cleveland Indians. And the first day back with that team, Bruce Campbell hit a home run. Now you know why we said in the beginning of this story that this is the story of a dead man who hit a home run. However, there are even stranger stories of dead men. Back in 1936, on May the 8th, at the Bay Meadows racetrack in California, a jockey named Ralph Neves was riding the favorite when suddenly the horse threw Ralph Neves, threw him right over its head. Down went the jockey. People screamed in horror as one horse after another trampled on the helpless jockey. Ralph Neves was unconscious by the time they reached him. A doctor carefully examined his body. There was no heartbeat. There was no breathing. Ralph Neves was dead. Afternoon newspapers carried that story up in big headlines. Ralph Neves, famous jockey, killed at Bay Meadows racetrack. The coroner came to get the body when suddenly the dead man sat up. No one has ever explained what brought Ralph Neves back to life. But this much I do know. Ralph Neves, who on May the 8th, 1936, at the Bay Meadows racetrack in California was officially listed as dead, was well enough the next day to ride again and win. But speaking of horse racing and dead men, let me tell you the strange legend of Frank Tilley. It happened so long ago that it's become legendary. A legend as told to me that's been handed down from generation to generation. For almost 100 years ago, racing at Newmarket, England, was a jockey named Frank Tilley. However, before one particular race, Frank Tilley made a strange request. He requested that he be strapped onto his horse's back. And he was strapped onto his horse's back. Frank Tilley went on to win that race, but when they led his horse back into the winner's circle after the race was over, they discovered that Frank Tilley was dead. He had been dead when his horse had carried him over the finish line, and it was only because he was strapped onto his horse's back that he had not fallen off that horse. That's the story of a dead jockey who won a horse race, but that's not the end of the story. For seated in the grandstand watching her husband ride that afternoon was Frank Tilley's wife. And when they went to tell Mrs. Tilley that her husband was dead, they found her seated, sitting quietly, staring straight ahead, not moving a muscle. She didn't seem to hear them when they told her of her husband's death. And then Then they made the horrible discovery that she was also dead. Those strange deaths created a sensational story, and then the shocking truth became known. For the official autopsy on both bodies showed that they had been poisoned. Was it a double suicide? Was it murder? To this day, nobody has been able to solve that mystery. The strangest mystery on record. When a dead wife sat watching a horse race that was won by her dead husband. Portrait of a mystery. Reel 2. In Turf Talk, he's tops. The name is Eddie Arcaro, famous jockey, and naturally, being a champion himself, Eddie Arcaro favors the shave cream of champions, Colgate Brushless Shave Cream, for he recently wrote me.
Like a real thoroughbred, Colgate Brushless Shave Cream breaks fast from the barrier, softens and wilts wiry whiskers in next to no time. But the real mark of the champion is this. Colgate Brushless is there at the finish, for it stays moist and fluffy all the way through a shave. It's a sure thing with me, Bill. Signed, Eddie Arcaro.
Yes, man, as Eddie Arcaro says, Colgate Brushless Shave Cream gives your razor a smooth, fast track, so it can cut close and clean without pulling or snagging. And whether your razor is speeding on the straightaway or following the curve of your chin, Colgate Brushless stays with it. Keeps tough whiskers soft and pliant for easy, painless shaving. You can be glad, too, that Colgate Brushless is made light and fluffy, not greasy or gooey, for it's an active cream that rinses off your razor in place lickety-split. Remember, Colgate Brushless Shave Cream is made for you men with wiry whiskers and naturally dry, sensitive skin. Suppose you try it for your next shave, and if you're not 100% satisfied, just send the top of the carton back to me, Bill Stern, care of Colgate, Jersey City, Zone 2, New Jersey, and I'll see that you get double your money back. Tonight, ask for the 9-ounce jumbo jar of Colgate Brushless, the shave cream of champions. Reel 3, Portrait of a heavyweight championship prize fight. Next Wednesday night, Billy Conn fights Joe Louis for the heavyweight championship of the world. That will be a great fight. But did you ever hear the strange story of the famous fights that never took place? On June the 3rd, 1936, Jimmy Braddock, then the heavyweight champion of the world, was to defend his title against Max Schmeling. And on that night of this championship fight, as Max Schmeling climbed through those ropes at the Madison Square Garden Bowl, there were 70,000 empty seats. Not a soul was there, for everyone knew that Jimmy Braddock, the heavyweight champion of the world, was not going to show up. And he didn't, even though Schmeling did. But there have been other famous heavyweight championship fights that never took place. Do you remember when Jack Dempsey was the heavyweight champion of the world? For years, people have been trying to get him to fight a big, burly giant named Harry Wills. But Dempsey never would agree to fight Harry Wills until one day, Jack Dempsey did agree to that fight. He agreed to fight Harry Wills. And Harry Wills was to be paid $50,000 if, for any reason, that fight did not come off. And the fight was mysteriously called off. And Harry Wills became the only fighter in history to receive $50,000 for not fighting for the heavyweight championship of the world. But speaking of fights that never took place, let me tell you about Harvey Thorpe. Harvey Thorpe was a great fighter. And many years ago, he agreed to go down to Mexico and fight in Mexico. And on the day of that particular fight, Harvey Thorpe was already in the Mexican ring, ready to begin the fight, when suddenly the Mexican Fight Club was raided by a notorious Mexican bandit. Harvey Thorpe, the American fighter, protested that the fight should be allowed to go on, that he'd come all the way down from America to fight that fight. However, the Mexican bandit laughed at Harvey Thorpe and scornfully threw a bag of beans in the American's face. And with that bag of beans, he told him to shut up. Harvey Thorpe, the American fighter, brought those Mexican beans back to America as a souvenir. And later, out of curiosity, he planted those beans on his farm. Those Mexican beans turned out to be soybeans, the first soybeans in America. And out of those soybeans was made flour, milk, glue, varnish, paints, and plastics. And so, because an American fighter could not fight in Mexico, he became a millionaire, and a new industry was born. However, there's one legend of a famous fight that never took place that's even stranger than any of these. For although record books fail to recall this fight, legend has it that years ago, two Englishmen were scheduled to stage a boxing exhibition, but they hated each other so intensely that they refused to speak to each other, and their fight was called off. Yet even though they did hate each other, they became business partners. However, as business partners, they still hated one another so much that they never spoke to each other. Yet despite the fact that these two business partners hated each other so much that they would never speak to each other, together they wrote the most famous music in English history. For you know them as Gilbert and Sullivan. And that's the strange story of fights that never took place. But the strangest part of this story is that every one of those scheduled fights, Gilbert versus Sullivan, Harvey Thorpe's Mexican fight, Jack Dempsey versus Harry Wills, and Max Schmaling's fight with Jimmy Braddock, all those fights that never took place down through the years, all those fights were scheduled for the same day of each year, June the 3rd. But it's even stranger when you realize that June the 3rd, the date down through the years on which all of those fights were scheduled to take place, was the very same date on which Gilbert, of Gilbert and Sullivan, who began this jinx, was buried. Portrait of famous fights that never took place. Reel 4. In just a moment, we'll present our special guest tonight, in person, the man who became famous by making a lobby out of hobbies, Dave Elman. But first, here's Charles F. McCarthy.
What's your stubble trouble? Tough whiskers? Sensitive skin? Forget it, brothers. That's a soft assignment for Colgate Brushless, the shave cream of champions. You betcha. This light, fluffy cream is a star performer when your chin has bristles like a porcupine. For Colgate Brushless, softens your whiskers right down to the skin line, keeps moist and active clear through your shave, leaves your face smooth, cool as a cucumber. Sheer comfort is yours when you use Colgate Brushless, the shave cream of champions. Try Colgate Brushless tomorrow. Now, next Sunday is Father's Day. So how's about treating Dad to the shave cream of champions? Present him with a 9-ounce jumbo jar of good old Colgate Brushless shave cream. Bet you he'll say, thanks for the practical, thoughtful gift. And now to Bill Stern and Dave Elman.
Reel 5. Colgate's camera close-up of Dave Elman. Here is the creator of Hobby Lobby, the famous radio star, Dave Elman.
Good evening, Bill.
Good evening, Dave. You've had some great sports figures tell you about their hobbies. What were some of the most interesting?
Well, Jack Dempsey has a hobby of collecting prize ring gongs. He has the bells that started almost all of his big fights.
Well, now that is interesting.
And you know Benny Leonard, the undefeated lightweight champion of the world?
Yep.
Well, he has a hobby of collecting famous fighters' boxing trunks.
Go on, Dave.
Well, there was Michael Pedbereznik, whose hobby was walking. He set a world record by walking 22,000 miles, and he never left his own home.
That's a lot of walking, Dave. Who else?
There's a golfer named Jimmy Nichols who's won many big tournaments, despite the fact he has only one arm.
Well, now that really is something, Dave.
And I mustn't forget Coleman Clark, the table tennis champion, who plays table tennis with frying pans.
Well, certainly athletes have some strange habits, don't they, Dave?
Yeah, Bill, but you haven't heard the strangest one.
Well, I can't imagine what could be stranger than those that I've already heard.
Then listen to this. Not so long ago, there was a famous prize fighter named Felix Martinez. Well, after Felix's days were over in the ring, he took up fencing and went on to become a champion. But the strange part of this story is that Felix Martinez, who was a champion prize fighter and later became a fencing champion, is totally blind.
Thank you so much. Good luck and good night, Dave Elman. Ladies and gentlemen, that's the 3-0 mark for tonight. Next Friday night, we'll be back, same time, same stations, with another edition of the Colgate Shave Cream Sports Newsreel. Our guest next Friday evening will be the famous syndicated cartoonist, believe it or not, Bob Ripley. So be sure and be with us at our usual time next Friday night when we'll present in person the most widely syndicated cartoonist in the world, believe it or not, Bob Ripley. See you then. Until then, I'll be seeing you on the screen in the News of the Day newsreel at your favorite Lowe's or Associated Theaters. Now, until next Friday night at this very same time, this is Bill Stern wishing you all a good night.
Bill Stern, the Colgate Shave Cream Man, is on his way. Bill Stern, the Colgate Shave Cream Man, had lots to say. He told you tales of sports heroes, the inside dope he really knows. So listen in next Friday night. Colgate.
Ladies, how would you like to buy all the soap you need? Well, one of these days you will. But that day isn't here yet, because this country is alarmingly short of fat, the most important ingredient of soap. So salvage every speck of used cooking fat you can and sell it to your butcher for 4 cents a pound. Remember, where there's fat, there's soap. The Bill Stern Show tonight came from New York City.
This is NBC, the national broadcasting company.
Today's broadcast is brought to you by ClassicBaseballBroadcasts.com, your one-stop destination for thousands of authentic, vintage radio game broadcasts, interviews and highlights. Red Barber, Mel Allen, Vin Scully, Ernie Harwell, Kurt Godey are just a few of the Ford Frick award-winning voices. There are hundreds more that will bring back childhood memories from back in the day when the game was always on. From the crack of the bat to the roar of the crowd, relive the moments that made Baseball America's favorite pastime. Get started for free and step back in time listening to baseball's greatest moments.